All right, the recording is up. So we are 2 to 3 weeks between episodes, Dr. Mike. And that's largely my fault because I've been wrapping up the semester at uni and it's been a nightmare, but we're over the hump. We've had a lot happening in the world since we last talked. We've had protests going off. We've had a pandemic that seems to have taken a backseat in a lot of the news. We've had some pretty significant CrossFit developments in the last couple of weeks. We've had a lot going on. What's happening over there?
It's a wild world over here. New York City has a tendency to be anything that happens on the planet, and you can just like magnify it in New York City because it's just the amount of stress and friction that you experience in a city like this just has a tendency to heighten everything. Everything from, we'll say, like a protest to just people's personalities. You know, like you go into New York and you talk to somebody and you're like, I've never talked to that individual before, because they have a personality that's probably common throughout the country. But the fact that New York is New York, it's just it just heightens it. It turns wacky people into wackier people. And we're all a little bit wacky. So doing well, I guess. New York.
Nice. Did you have much impact from protests and stuff like that in your area? Was it something that you saw?
I'm far enough out of like Manhattan per se. So, there wasn't any rioting or looting out in where I was. There was like threats of it and stuff like that. But that was mostly like old baby boomers on Facebook groups being like, Antifa is coming. It's like the protests that we had, and I had to drive past it like every day to get to work, was just people on a bridge, just with signs and trying to get their point across, which, there's nothing more fundamentally American than being able to protest and peacefully get your point across. So I don't know. It's nice. I like when kids, especially younger people, they have an understanding of, the power of their voice, right? Whether or not it's, whether you're protesting racism or you're protesting, I don't know, a new building going up in your neighborhood, right? That's going to change the property values and things like that. Like you've got to realize that what you say, how you say it, the manner in which you communicate can be the difference between, winning and losing. So when you see these folks get their voice like that, and, it's exciting. So I was pumped about it. I was like, yeah, come on over, say what you want to say, be nice, don't be violent. And, you're going to get your point across better that way anyways. So it was awesome. I was appreciative of everything that was going on around here, but you always have a little bit of that baseline fear that things were going to get violent. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but everything worked out well, so can't complain.
Yeah, we had a little bit of peaceful protesting over here around the major cities as well. So that seemed to go quite well. I think the police kind of said that they were okay with it. There was actually organisations that were organising and driving the protests, and it started out as an unlawful act. It actually went before the court, I think, especially in Sydney at least, and it was like a very last minute ruling to say that it was lawful. I think part of the issue was because of the public gatherings with the COVID and not being able to maintain social distancing, which was still obviously a huge issue. And I think they've had a couple of flare-ups in the community spread based on that. That was the protest itself, good. I think it's good for people to get together and talk about what they're passionate about. I mean, that's what we do every week, right? But yeah, the idea of being in sort of close quarters like that with a huge group, I think was a little bit scary at the moment, just because we're still taking so many measures to minimize this thing. And, going back to the gym this week was awesome, but you sort of feel for the the business operators because of the lengths that they have to go to just to be able to operate. And, you know, they can't get many people through the doors in there, and they have to spread out everything. It's actually, as a punter, it's actually pretty awesome because it's quiet and you've kind of got the pick of whatever you want, and it's quite nice. But it would be very challenging for businesses at the moment. But from what I can tell on this side of the world, most things are getting back now. So we're really starting to see some normality creep back in. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. Hopefully, I think to some extent we've kind of gotten used to this being our new normal, and you know, the idea of the pandemic and virus spread and all this, it's not as prevalent in people's minds. So I guess that's a good thing because we can kind of get on with it. But at the same time, I think we still need to be super, super mindful. It's only going to take one sort of, what do they call them? Like a super spreader just to cause a real upswing somewhere. And we're kind of back a few steps, but you know, hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Hopefully no bacteria gets us and we can rid the world of racism, and people will be good and police officers will behave, and we'll all freaking get along. And I think that's what most people want. So let's hope it happens. Yeah,
it's interesting times, man. Interesting times to be around the world. So we are. This is our 7th week, right? So we are on the tail end now.
That's right.
We probably should just recap where we've come a little bit, and we're going to wind up this series. But we're kind of just been building through this whole sort of clinical interaction and going through each phase as it's going to apply to someone that comes in, and in terms of their whole injury cycle, I guess you could call it. So today we're at communication, and this is kind of how we cap off all of these things. And this is a really important one. At the same time, it's a bit of an eye roller, I suppose. You kind of go, oh, fuck, communication, like how boring, right? I suppose it is what you make it. But I was kind of thinking about this week, and I was really reminded of the importance of this one, because I've been on both sides of the fence as the practitioner that needs to do the communicating well. And I've been on the other side of that, where as the patient that needs to be communicated to well and needs to understand, but that's not always the case. And I think when you're not with a full understanding of what's going on and you're not able to buy into what's happening, it's a shame. It's kind of it's a bit of a waste of the experience, I think. So let's run back through from the top. Let's go back to number 1. So these are our first principles. These are our first baseline principles that drive clinical practice. And we started off with load versus capacity. So give us a quick rundown.
Yeah, load versus capacity is the simple concept that an entity or structure, if you want to get really specific, has a capacity to experience a load, right? There is a bucket, and that bucket has a certain volume, and then, you know, you can equate that to, you know, that's that bucket's capacity to experience the load of whatever you're going to put in it. And as long as you can keep the load underneath the capacity of a given entity or structure, you will preserve the integrity of that structure. So in a sense of, you know, in a building, load exceeding the capacity is bad. The building breaks and, you know, people get hurt and you get sued and all that other stuff. So that's really, really bad if you're an architect. In terms of, you know, a structure like your lower back, then, you know, that's going to cause pain. So as simply as it gets, load exceeding capacity is bad. That's it. Like, it causes pain or, yeah, destruction, you name it. Load versus capacity, not good.
Nice. Very simple, very direct, very simple. So if we do exceed capacity, so if there's too much load on a certain tissue or certain joint, we are heading towards some sort of pathology. So our second episode is about a respect for that pathology and making sure that we appreciate everything that's going on within that person, within that problem, right?
Yes.
Got that one? Yes.
I wasn't sure if you were, I wasn't sure you put that one on a tee for me. Yeah. I mean, you have to respect it. You have to understand it. You have to know what you can and can't fix. So respecting is understanding the things that can go wrong when that load exceeds the capacity and figuring out, I guess, where to go from there.
So when we've got that picture and then we're heading down this clinical pathway, we're trying to help someone figure out a problem. The next stage of this is respecting the symptoms. So we want to work with that person. We want to build a full picture of everything that they're bringing in. So everything that they're feeling within themselves, we want to have all that subjective information. So it's our job to try and translate all of that important information and start building that towards an understanding of what's going on. So we need to be making sure that we're not missing anything there, because all of this stuff matters. So every symptom has some sort of explanation for it. It's there's not just things that are irrelevant, that are just kind of there because they're there. They're there and they need to be explained. So we've got our whole episode 3 kind of picking that apart, and it's such an important part of it because there are maps and there are ways to explain these things, and in the work that you and I do, we care about that stuff.
Yeah, every symptom your physician should be able to look back and say, yeah, that's why that's there. That's why that's there. This is why this is there. So it takes a lot of work to understand those symptoms, and once you do, it's very powerful.
So that's mostly the subjective data. That's a lot of the stuff that we need to interpret that can't necessarily be directly measured as tangible. But then we've got our next one, which is we talked about measuring everything, and we took this episode in a couple of different directions, but it was a good one. I enjoyed it. So this is where we're really talking about, we need to try and capture as much data as we can. We need to measure as much as we can so that we can track it, so that we can understand if someone is improving or if they're not improving or if they've plateaued. We need to know what's going on. So if we can't measure it, we can't manage it. So we're trying to capture range of motion data. We want to have all of that. We want to be able to measure all of that subjective stuff as well. So pain scores, activity levels, everything that we can try and make use of to see how a problem is progressing. We need to try and measure all that stuff. So we like to measure everything.
Yeah, you got to blend the subjective and objective, because the subjective and objective is going to give you an idea of what the pathology is. The pathology is going to then go back to, the load exceeding the capacity. So it all just builds on each other. As a skilled individual, you should mostly have it by the time that subjective data comes. But when that objective data comes where you're measuring it, you are using that to confirm what's going on. And then, we'll get to a point in this podcast where, we'll find another use for that objective data. But point number 5 is what, Chris?
We've hit the diagnosis. So we've taken all of this information that we've been putting together with the help of the patient, and we're arriving at a point where we can start explaining what's going on.
Right. Yep. And all that stuff's going to lead to that diagnosis. Everything that we've done, the load versus capacity, the pathology, the subjective, the objective, gives you that diagnosis. And from that diagnosis, only then can you get into the fun part, which we spend episode 6 talking about, and that is treatment. And that's the culmination of it all. That's where it kind of all comes together to a nice big peak, with the exception of episode 7. That's why this is a 7-part series. But yeah, you use everything from those first 5 points to then guide your treatment. And then, not only do you have to treat somebody, but that brings us to principle number 7, is you have to do an outstanding job communicating everything that is going on to your patient. Yes. Can you get good results without communicating? Yeah, but then you're an asshole, right? And you are leaving maybe 5 to 10% of the results on the table by not communicating well, right? The patient buying in and being able to hold you accountable via what you are saying in your communication is an extremely, extremely important part of the process. And that's the difference between, if you're a physician, that's the difference between somebody coming for a few visits, getting 80% better and leaving. If you're a patient, that good communication is going to ease your mind such that you and the doctor establish a better relationship and establish better trust. And in that, you will get better results as well. So communication, much like all of these principles, mutually benefit the physician and the patient. And yeah, you've got to do it. It's one of those things that I used to hate. I used to hate communicating with people because I had to do this and that and that. Okay, we're going to break this down from a fundamental standpoint and we're going back in here. But as soon as I realized that the better I communicated, the better my patients got, it just became something that was, second nature to me.
Yeah, I think I was super excited for the treatment episode that we did last time, because that's kind of the meat and potatoes and the fun stuff that we get to do. That's where we put our skills into practice. And I was probably less excited knowing that communication was next, right? Because it's just that softer side of things. But it's as important, if not more important, because if you're a crap communicator, as someone in our position, you don't have a business.
Yeah.
So that's a huge part. But also from the other side, to the patient side, you're probably not getting a great result if you haven't been really included well and you're not understanding well of what's going on. In our heads, when we have we go through this cycle with someone, we're kind of thinking, I know what's going on with this person. I know what they need, and I know potentially what's down the track for them if they don't see this through, and if they don't commit to this and actually seek a resolution through this process. Getting them to understand that so that they buy into the same level, that's the challenge. That's the skill. And, we talk about the treatment being a skill and being a really important skill, and it is, and it's hard. The communication's just as hard a skill, I think. And, it's not something that happens overnight. You probably have to mess it up a few times first along the way. It's a really difficult thing, and it takes time. And, we talked about this before, I think, when we sort of discussed like maybe what the CrossFit exposure gave us as being able to stand in front of people and talk and communicate and that sort of thing. I'm so grateful that I had that experience, because communicating in a clinical setting is not something that you just walk in and you do from day one. It's something that you have to get some reps on the board with. And it's, it doesn't always work. There's sometimes where I sort of reflect on it and go, oh man, did I have to say that when I said that? So it's a learning experience, and it, it is a real skill, right?
Yeah. It's a complicated thing because obviously the more you do something, the better that you're going to get if you have like some concept of self-awareness. But communication is an interesting one because the better that you do on principles 1 through 6, the easier that your communication is going to be, because your attention to those details will do your communicating for you. It's just like everything in this process. It all builds off of each other. So if you're understanding a pathology, you can communicate that quite easily to a patient. You may have to develop a skill set that requires you to communicate that to them at a level of understanding that they have, but you can communicate that. Subjective, you're communicating everything in their subjective feedback back to their pathology or their diagnosis. Same thing objectively. You then use those objective feedbacks to communicate how they're going to proceed through their treatment plan, how much progress that they can make. It's open communication too. It's not a one-way street. You're not saying you are better, you're getting better. It's explicitly clear for both patient and physician that you're getting better when you have those measurements. For the first time in these people's lives, a lot of times they're getting a real and accurate diagnosis, which a diagnosis inherently, if it is accurate and specific, is a point of communication. And the treatment, you're communicating through them. You're communicating things through the treatment. They're feeling things through that treatment as well. So you get to that point where if you've done everything well, it's just the communication is, this is what's wrong with you. This is why I know this is wrong with you. This is what I'm looking for to determine whether or not I know that I'm fixing you. This is how you're going to let me know whether or not I'm fixing you. This is how I know that I don't need to see you this many times, for a week for this amount of time. This is how I know you're done. And there's no guessing in it. And, the other facet of communication is, as a physician, you have to be confident in what you're saying, and you have to fake it till you make it. You have to pretend that you're 100% certain of what's going on. And even if all the data backs it up, there's always going to be that little bit of doubt in your head, right? A little bit of that imposter syndrome. And the more you do it and the more you're right, the more you sit there and you look at them and you go, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is how I know. And this is what you're going to feel. And it's game over, right? That's the communication that people want, right? That's what they want to feel from their doctor. They don't want to go to their doctor and be like, well, there's something going on. There's a little bit of a mechanical dysfunction in your lower back. It's like, no, this is what's going on. You have adhesion and your lumbar erectors at L4, L5, mild adhesion to the supraspinous ligament, L5, S1. We're going to fix this with manual adhesion release, instrument adhesion release, until we can take your quadruped lumbar flexion from 50% to at least 80%, in which we can downgrade your treatment time from twice a week to once a week, and then we can go until we get maximum medical improvement, and you're able to return to your activities of daily living for 1 month. That's what people want to hear. And then you go, any questions? And either they won't have any questions, or they'll be like, yeah, well, you explained everything well, or they'll have questions that you will know the answer to. That's it. Sorry, I talk fast.
I think there's almost two types of patients a lot of the time. There's someone that really is very interested in those sticking points. They really want to be a part of the data, and they're interested in what their straight leg raise was last week versus what it is this week, and that sort of thing. And I use a whiteboard, and I put numbers and stuff up on there as we're going and record all that stuff. And I think it's really nice to have that kind of visual, because it just creates a bit of buy-in. So I think that's really cool. But then some people not interested really. They're just interested in getting better. And that's totally cool. That doesn't change the process. We're still doing everything the same way, but we might just communicate it a little bit differently, because that's their experience. They're not as interested in the details so much. So yeah, it's I think, we touched on it before, that there's not really anywhere to hide. So for both parties, because of the transparency of using measurements and using data and stuff like this. So if we're not doing our job properly, then that's going to be reflected in what shows up in the data. And for the patient as well, if they're not going to maybe follow through with the treatment plan, if they're not going to, maybe they're going to feel better at 70% and they're just going to stop coming or something. But, you can't escape the fact that we've got some numbers here to say that this is where you're at right now. So, if we can communicate that properly, then it should be a good outcome for everyone. We get fulfillment as a provider that's helping someone and making a small change in the world. And if we do that, we do our job well and communicate it well, then someone's getting out of pain. So these are good things.
Very good things. That's what our job is. And it's equally important, I think, for us to foster an environment where, we can enable that patient to then communicate back with us as efficiently and as easily as possible. So, we're looking for specific things too on a visit by visit basis that we want communicated from that patient. And, we're asking very specific questions in order to get very specific answers to ensure that the communication is clean and clear. So, it's not just what are you feeling, it's, how have you felt since last time? How is, what have you done since last time? And then we're giving you we're giving you an opportunity to open up a conversation so that we can find some way, shape, or form to educate you. And education is a huge part of communication as well, because, even in that, 15 or 20 minute treatment session, there's great value from a patient standpoint in taking, 3 to 5 minutes of that time and just chatting, showing something, and drawing on a whiteboard or drawing something else, and letting them understand what's going on and answering questions. So the communication has to be a two-way street.
Definitely. Yeah. I ask the question sometimes, early on in taking a history, for instance, and if someone often has a fairly long history of trying to get a problem resolved, so they may have tried some other different modalities and some other providers along their road, and so one of the questions that I'll ask is, what was explained to you before in terms of your problem? Like, how was it explained to you? Because that's going to help me to understand this at the moment. A lot of the time there's no explanation to offer that's been given before. And I think it's disappointing, as a patient. I think especially when you've been dealing with something for a long time, you just want to know, or maybe even just at least have some sort of idea, but at least to be able to put something on it, just to be able to say, yes, it's this. But that seems like it's not uncommon to have very little explanation. So how could you commit to resolving something that you don't understand what's going on? How could you make changes in your life to reduce load? How could you do the things that you need to do to potentially let that injury heal if you have no real understanding of what's going on? So I get it. Like I get why they're not getting better on a few different levels, but I mean, that's a huge part of it, right?
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, you have to buy in. You have to, I mean, it's it's like anything, right? I mean, you're looking to, well, you're not looking, but you meet somebody. You meet the person of your dreams. You're not getting married to them tomorrow. Well, maybe you are if you're Britney Spears and Kevin Federline or some.
It's been done a few times, dude.
Been done a few times. I don't know where you go to in Australia to get married like overnight drunkenly, but it's Las Vegas.
To Vegas, right?
Yeah, you go. Yeah, if they go to Vegas too, all right, we're in good shape, so we can continue on the Vegas talk. But you are trying to vet and to understand that individual before you make a commitment, and most of the time, right, the more you try to understand that individual before you make the commitment, the better decision that you are going to make, right? It's just natural. It's like somebody puts a plate of food in front of you. Yeah, there's going to be some people that are like, food, eat, me. Other people are going to be like, what's in that? What do you think? Some people will eat it and then go, what was in that? So it's just natural curiosity. To buy in, you have to have as much information on the table. This is a service, right, that you and I provide. I mean, fundamentally, it's a service, but what it is that it's still a business transaction, right? I mean, I can't get any more basic than that in terms of, we provide you a service, you provide us with capital. And in any other case, you're doing market research. You're trying to understand what's going on. You're trying to see what's my problem that I'm trying to fix with this, right? Like you're not gonna look at your living room and go, man, I really need a TV, and then go to the store and buy a fucking vacuum, are you? You're gonna go, oh, I have a problem that I don't have a television. Now I'm going to do market research on televisions and purchase the best one for my budget that money can buy. And that's what that process is of communication and answering questions and getting on the same page. But the difference is the patient doesn't know what the problem is. So I have to then present that problem to the patient. They know symptomatically what it is, but they don't know fundamentally what the problem is until I explain it to them. Here's the problem. Here's how I'm going to fix you. Here's how long it's going to take. Here's how much money it's going to cost. I know you're going to feel better this much. And that's just as factually as I can put it. And that's it. It's a business deal. Just like anything else in life is a business deal. And I don't want to get too philosophical, but a marriage is a business deal. It's like I provide you value, you provide me value. A friendship is a business deal. It's a mutual exchange of willing parties for value. So that's all it is.
Willing bald parties.
Right. Two willing bald parties exchanging information and value.
That's right.
That's it.
Yeah, the point is, I think with this whole thing, right, all these 7 points, if we follow through all this, then when you get to that transaction, it is a fair transaction, because it's either a high quality transaction and that's benefiting both parties, or we kind of figure out that it's not the right place, it's not the right thing for us, and so it's still a fair thing because it's not over servicing, or it's not having someone in the place that they shouldn't be. So the importance of this whole process is that it ends up in a fair place, and if there's a transaction that does happen there, then it's the right one. So I think that's it's an important point that kind of drives this whole thing, right?
Yeah, and it can't be fair unless steps 1 through 7 are completed. That's to me is the biggest takeaway. Is it cannot be a fair exchange without principles 1 through 7 being respected and understood as irreducible truths. It can't be a fair exchange. You can't go to a chiropractor and have them say it's mechanical back pain and to put you on a 24 visit plan. That is not a fair transaction. And say, hey, your insurance company is going to cover it. That is not a fair transaction for either parties fundamentally. So you have to go through 1 through 7 in order to make it fair, and then make the decision. I've had people where I've said, listen, this is going to be a 10% improvement. It's probably going to cost you $500. And some people go, all right, I'm going to take my money elsewhere. And I go, that's okay. I've had people take me up on that offer saying 10%, $500. That's the best fucking deal I've ever had in my entire life. Right. I mean, that's it. Some people value when that information is placed in front of them. Some people value their bodies more than others, just like some people value their vehicles more than their cars, or they value big screen TVs more than kitchen equipment. It's just the way it goes. But I'm going to get enough people's bodies fixed to where I don't care if you come in. I really don't. I feel sorry for you because you're going to hurt. But outside of that, I mean, personally, yeah, I feel sad. But from a professional obligation standpoint, like, see you later. It's fine. I don't know what to tell you. We did it. We laid out the terms, and you denied the terms, and that's it.
Yeah, well, look, if I had pain in New York City, that's the place that I want to be going to, right? You can't hide from these things if we're doing these right. Then, from a patient perspective, you're lucky. You should be happy with this.
I don't think you should or you shouldn't be happy with it. I think that's completely your prerogative, but if you're looking to get out of pain in the most expeditious and safe way possible, then I'm your guy. But I'm also not maybe the least expensive person on the block. I'm probably the most valuable, but again, you can go to somebody, you can get an adjustment for $18. Won't do anything, but you can get an adjustment for $18.
Yeah, and revisit episode 6 for some more juicy aspects of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. You got me on a tangent now, so I'm trying to freaking stay cool, but it's hard. So go ahead, you say something.
I was just thinking, this whole the topic of communication, and we talk a lot about it as the clinical interaction, but it's, we can broaden that out as well. I mean, this whole thing that we're doing here is a form of communication, and it's, the other shit that we do, like social media and emails and all that stuff, it's all a form of communication. And it's a really important part for us, especially, I think, because it's a little bit different in terms of what we're doing. And so if we don't do a good job of communicating this, and if we, if this episode doesn't necessarily come across very well, and it probably won't, because, we're pretty shit at this, but we'll see. But we need a message to come across that kind of hits someone, because that's the whole point. That's the communication piece. That's, we want to let people know about what we do. That's what we have to do, because if we don't do that, we're not running a business well. So that is part of the point of this podcast. We've talked about why we do this and who we want to help, and part of the point of this is so that we can reach people, so that we can communicate to them, so that we can let them know what options that they have, and then they can make that decision. They can decide if they like it. They can decide if it's for them. But yeah, I mean, I think we're lucky that we were able to do this. We're lucky that the technology supports us to be able to do it. It fucking blows my mind that you're literally on the other side of the world right now. I don't think we could probably get further away, and we can sit here in our rooms, in our homes, and we can have these conversations in real time, and then we can go and put it on the internet and let 5 or 6 other people that want to go and listen to it.
2 or 3.
Yeah, there you go. But it's amazing, dude. The communication possibilities are incredible. And, we'd be silly not to try and make use of that and get that message out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, the opportunities for communication aren't scarce by any stretch of the imagination, right? If anything, we're over communicated too, on a day-to-day basis. To me, it's the efficiency, it's the cleanliness, it's the directness of the communication in a world where, you know, everything is so not ambiguous, but everything is murky. It's like I'm with every word that I say to every patient that I have, at least when we're in a clinical setting to where I'm trying to get a point across. Obviously, when I'm working on somebody and we're having, you know, conversation of who the fuck sells the best hot dog in the area, but my intent every time I open my mouth is to cut through everything and just to deliver the truth. And that's what you need. You got to find your people like that. And it's amazing when you can find that person, you know, in freaking Sydney, Australia, and then we can have this conversation. So yeah, I've been very, very lucky, very, very blessed. I'm pumped that you reached out to me that first time to have that conversation. And I don't think this is the end of this, but it's always nice to practice a little gratitude.
Yeah, and bald men have got to stick together. Like,
that's right. That's right. Bald men will take over the world. With all that testosterone, it's only a matter of time.
Although I haven't had a green day on my Whoop for about a week and a half, so I think the testosterone could be lacking a bit at the moment.
You think you're done?
I'm waiting for it to come back.
I'm waiting for it to come back. I don't know where my Whoop is.
I need some good solid sleep. I think is gonna reset that. But yeah, it's been few and far between lately.
The Whoop for me was something I got too obsessed about. I just couldn't handle it. I was like, I need to put this thing away. And I bought the Whoop when you like bought the Whoop for $500. And I was like a poor kid. And I was like, I need this. This is the only way you can become in tune with your body.
Yeah.
And then I got it. And I was like, I fucking hate my life. I was like, I got to go home. Hanging out with people, I'd be like, I got to go home. I need my sleep score to be higher. So I could finish 700 in the open. Weirdo. I know, dude. I was like, can't drink that. It's going to make my Whoop score go down. And I was like, I'm literally letting this fucking band take over my life.
Spoken like a true obsessive CrossFitter.
Dude, I obsess about everything. It always cracks me up when people are like, you get so obsessed about things. I'm like, why would you ever partake in anything without the intention of getting obsessed with it? I'm sorry. If you plugged in a Nintendo 64 right now and put like fucking Mario Kart in, I would become obsessed with being the best Mario Kart player on the planet. Anything right now. Look at this fucking boom mic that I got right now. I'm out to be the best podcaster. I ain't fucking around.
Oh yeah, with the new headset too. You look like a fucking bald Princess Leia or something.
Bald Princess Leia, yeah. What's Ben Kenobi? Can you hear me? Or what does she say in R2D2? I forget.
I don't know anything about Star Wars really. I don't know. I hope I got that right.
You're just gonna lay out you're just gonna slam me with Bald Princess Leia and not even respect the film. Wow.
Yeah, it's not my thing. I must admit, I'm more of a Bruce Willis action movie kind of guy.
Bruce Willis guy. I was thinking more like Vin Diesel, like a real skinny Vin Diesel.
I could bend it to Jason Statham, but yeah, Vin Diesel's getting a bit cheesy.
I mean, I'm trying to dig you a little bit. Obviously, you're Jason Statham, but I can't blow your ego up any more than it is.
Oh dear. Well, dude, what else we got? Have we got anything to tail in this episode? So we've kind of reached the finishing line on this little series, I think.
Stay tuned for the next one. Who knows what it's going to be? Send us a message, Mom. Yeah. Let me know what you want to hear about, Marianne.
Yeah, look, this has been fun because we've been able to really hit all these points. You know, there's not much that we haven't covered so far. We
You
have
should.
we have
Go ahead.
covered. Oh, dude. Well, we have covered some conspiracy theories. We have covered some CrossFit stuff. It's even gone so far as talking about measuring our dick. So this has been a very wide-ranging discussion.
Yeah, I mean, you should, first of all, you should have an idea. I guess I'll sum it up as best as I can. You should have an understanding anytime you go to any sort of physician now, whether or not they're good or bad. On top of that, you should have an understanding of whether or not you want to come to Apex or Wildcard after all this. Some of you are like, fuck yeah, measuring dicks. That's the kind of talk I want to have while I'm getting my sciatic nerve worked on. Other people are like, you pee-pee talk. So again, take it or leave it, baby.
Yeah, that's hopefully it's a representation of you and I a little bit and our sick sort of senses of humor, but it is what it is, dude. I think these are just conversations, right? Whether or not it's recording or anything, and you and I sort of talk off camera a little bit beforehand, and it doesn't really make a difference if we're recording it or not, right? It's just kind of what it is. So, you know, if someone does watch it and they're considering about whether they're going to come in and be a patient at Apex or Wildcard, then, you know, hopefully you will get a high level of professionalism, but you know, what you see is what you get in terms of who we are too. So,
oh yeah, but my professional, you're not going to get me to waver on that again, because it's just the way life is. You want to run a business, you got to be professional. But as soon as I can take that mask off a little bit and show you my personality and who I am, I'm more than happy to do that within the realm of professionalism. I'm not going to be here like a robot for fucking 12 visits. You know, I may be a robot in visit 1, visit 2, but as soon as I feel any humanity from you, I'm going to give you all the humanity I got.
Yeah, ditto that.
Ditto that.
I think that's important. You got to be a human.
Nobody wants to see a robot. The people who want to see robots are the same people that spend fucking $1,000 on fucking soft tissue manipulation tools, the next vibrating thing, the beautiful thing. It's like, yeah, sure, you want a robot to fix you, even though the robot can't fix you. But those are the same types of people. The people I got to be like, don't do that. And they're like, why not? I'm like, because it doesn't do shit and you're wasting your time.
And some of those guys are running very busy practices and they're making tons of money. So we've got to find a balance between running a business that meets the needs of our goals and our lives, and a business that is does things the right way and really provides incredible value. So it's the journey, and it's something that I get excited about. So it's good.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think ethical capitalism is going to get you to that point in a way that serves both the business and the patron. So, you know, there's no mystery as to what I need to do. You can make money and be a valuable asset to your community and to the people that you're helping in an ethical way. Is it harder to do it in an ethical way and easier to do it in a shitty way? Probably. But yeah, that's my belief, is that your value is directly correlated to the skill set that you bring to the table, and your skill set is reflected in your prices, and your prices are reflected in how many people you fix and what your skill set is again. So that's never something I worry about. Some people worry about it, like, how do I make money and how do I treat people at the same time? To me, it's never something. It's how do I fix more people, and the money takes care of itself, because that's a basic fundamental law of supply and demand, right? The more people I fix, the less time I have to fix people, the more I charge to fix people. And, you know, it may get to a point where I become unaffordable to certain individuals. And if that becomes an issue, then it's like, dude, just call me, text me. Let's figure something out. We can always figure something out. So, yeah, another tangent number 12. I'm tired today. That's why I can't stay on fucking task.
No, I like that tangent because I think that's something that you and I have in common. It's probably why we're on the same page with a lot of stuff because we want to be on a journey to becoming the best that we can be. And so it's seeking out excellence, seeking out mastery, and that's a long way down the track, but it just keeps getting further away as you keep heading towards it. As you get better, but that goal doesn't necessarily get closer because it's maybe not a goal that you actually obtain as such. There's always something to improve, always something to do better. And it's very fulfilling. I love to be able to live my life this way. I've lived that life where it's a job's not very fulfilling, and I was just about to drop a massive F1 again, but it's that's not a great life. That doesn't tick all the boxes, and so for me, it's very, very rewarding, very refreshing, very appreciative of being able to do this. And so I hope that comes out in the brand, in the business, in the service. And, I work my ass off to get better and to be able to deliver more value and to have more knowledge. And, that's why we do these things, because we learn from each other and make each other better. And so, yeah, man, I appreciate the shit out of you.
Appreciate the shit out of you too, bro.
All right, dude. Well, with a bit of bald man love there at the end, let's wrap this up.
There's never too much bald man love. Have an awesome week, guys. Appreciate you. And guy and maybe 2 girls, but that's it.
All right. We'll see you soon.